I'm the Bible Charts Guy, and this is the book of 2 Peter, which was written to combat practical atheism in his day. Download this chart in the description below, hit subscribe, and let's do a little apologetics with St. Peter. Paul taught that if there's no resurrection, then our faith is pointless. 1 Corinthians 15, we all know this passage. If there is no resurrection, then not even Christ has been raised, and your faith is futile. And then he continues down in verse 32, if the dead are not raised, well, then it doesn't matter how we live, so we might as well eat and drink, for tomorrow we die, and there will be no final reckoning after that. This kind of atheistic faith is what Peter confronts in his second letter. He's writing to Christians who ask, where is the promise of his coming? Jesus, he ain't coming back. But it gets worse. These weren't just lone skeptics. They were atheistic evangelists trying to bring others down with them. And these false teachers, they came from within their own churches. Look what Peter writes in 2 Peter 2. These false prophets and false teachers arose among the people within their church. And they sought to entice unsteady souls within those churches with their deceptive and their destructive heresies. So clearly, this is a dangerous group, and their arguments need to be confronted directly. And so Peter structures his entire letter around responding to their specific arguments, and there are 3 of them. Peter's letter has an introduction and a conclusion, bracketing his direct confrontation of these false teachers' denial of the second coming here in the center. Now, these false teachers, they marshal 3 arguments or 3 objections to the doctrine of the second coming, and Peter responds to each of those objections in turn. Let's start with the third objection, which I actually label as objection number 1, but I hope that'll make sense in a few minutes. Now, these false teachers, their fundamental claim is that Jesus is not coming back. There is no second coming. We already saw that they asked the question, where is the promise of his coming? God, he's not doing anything in the world. He's not doing it now, and he won't do it in the future. For they reason all things are continuing as they were from the beginning of creation. But that's not true, Peter says. Things have not continued unchanged since creation. And now it's time for Peter to respond. And he says that these false teachers have overlooked something. You have overlooked, Peter says, the story of the flood. I doubt those who drowned in the flood would say that things continued unchanged since creation. And then Peter continues. He argues that if the earth back then perished by water, so the earth now is stored up for fire, being kept until the final coming day of judgment. But that's only Peter's first response to this objection. Each objection in 2 Peter is followed by not 1, but 2 responses. Peter next argues that the doctrine of the second coming of Jesus is intimately tied to all that the Old Testament prophets taught about the coming day of the Lord. To deny the second coming is effectively to deny the whole of the Old Testament. These atheists' second objection follows naturally from the first. So, if Jesus isn't coming back, then there will be no final judgment. Or, in their words, the condemnation and the destruction of the wicked is both idle and it is asleep. That is, the final judgment is not coming. Peter then marshals 3 examples from the Old Testament, proving that if God judged the wicked in the past, so he will do so again in the future. Take a look at these 3 examples. Example number 1, God did not spare the angels, but rather cast them into hell. Example number 2, God did not spare the world in Noah's day, but rather sent the flood. And in Genesis 19, he didn't spare Sodom and Gomorrah, but he rained fire and sulfur down on them. These atheists conclude with an ad hominem attack. If Jesus isn't coming back, then there will be no final judgment. And objection number 3, all that the apostles teach is a lie. They made it all up. But Peter says, no, that's not true. I saw Jesus with my own eyes. I was an eyewitness of his transfiguration. The second coming cannot be a cleverly devised myth because Peter was an eyewitness of the majesty, honor, and glory of Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. But how does this prove that there's going to be a second coming? Well, the blinding light that radiated from Jesus' body at the Transfiguration was simply a glimpse or a foreshadow or an anticipation of the glory of Jesus at his second coming. So look at this. The Transfiguration is recorded in Matthew 17, where it says that the face of Jesus shone like the sun and his clothes became white as light. Well, what is Jesus going to ride upon at his second coming in Revelation 19 but a white horse? And his eyes, they will also shine. They will shine like fire. And he will be followed by the armies of heaven who themselves are wearing fine white linen. Glorious, white, shining, radiating clothing. Now, the New Testament, it consistently speaks of the second coming of Jesus as the arrival of glory. Look at this, primarily in the Gospel of Matthew. It's everywhere. Matthew 16, the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in glory, in the glory of his Father. For then will appear in the heaven a sign of the Son of Man, for the Son of Man will come in the clouds with power and great glory. Think of this like a light show at his second coming. When the Son of Man comes in his glory, Matthew 25, and all the angels with him, then he will sit on his glorious throne. And 2 Peter 1 teaches that we will share in that glory, the glory of godliness. 2 Peter chapter 1. His divine power has granted to us all things that pertain to life and godliness through a knowledge of him, a knowledge of Jesus, who has called us to his own glory. And therefore, Paul can write in Colossians chapter 3, when Christ, who is your life, appears, that is at his second coming, then you will appear with him in glory. And Peter, in his first letter, he can rejoice in the fact that he himself will be a partaker in the glory that is to be revealed at the second coming. For when the chief shepherd, Jesus, appears at his second coming, then you will receive an unfading crown of glory. Peter will wear a glorious crown, and so will we. So what is the message of 2 Peter for us today? It's pretty intense, but Peter teaches that the earth is going to burn. And therefore, he reasons, what sort of people ought we to be in lives of holiness and godliness as we wait? As we wait, for we are waiting and hastening for the coming day of God. We Christians, we ought to think of ourselves as a waiting people. We are waiting for the new heavens and the new earth where righteousness dwells. This new creation forms a key part of Paul's argument in the book of Ephesians. If you want to see how the new creation is at the center of a chiasm in Ephesians 1-3, you should check out this next video.